Today we're going to talk sleep, and it's going to be exciting. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very passionate about what I do and trying to spread this message out. And I always like to start off with some disclosures. I say I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. I receive no funding through pharmaceuticals. I am employed by Lee Memorial Health System. I am an author and have a website that provides sleep health information. And if anybody wants any of copies of my books, I'll be happy to give an ebook copy. Just contact me through the website of paradisesleep.com. I always say that if I have one conflict of interest, it's that I'm a husband, I am a father, and I'm trying to spread a message to make this world a better place for them as well. So, fact. 1/3 of our lives was spent in sleep, and if it wasn't made to be something important, it would have been one of the biggest evolutionary blunders that evolution has gone through. So I call this the top 5 things that I say most docs don't know about sleep, but many people don't know about sleep. Teachers, workers, all of us. 1, nobody sleeps through the night. 2, insomnia is a symptom. 3, an untreated sleep apnea is as dangerous as smoking. 4, narcolepsy commonly presents as insomnia, and medications are actually not first-line treatment for many sleep disorders. So, why did I say that top 5 things that many docs don't know about sleep? I like to talk about how I learned about sleep. When I went to medical school, I received 1 lecture on sleep apnea and another lecture on medications for sleep. And that's it. I really didn't get any sleep lectures. In my primary care training, I received 0. I never received 1 lecture on sleep at all. I have a master's in public health, and not only did I not have a course on sleep, but I never had, again, 1 lecture on sleep. And now you're saying, why is this guy qualified to talk here? Well, I ended up going to Vanderbilt to do a child neurology fellowship training, and over there the Department of Neurology, the Department of Sleep Medicine was through the Department of Neurology, and I got my first exposure to it, and I loved it. And it actually happened to be around the time that I was going through insomnia, where I was going through a number of different changes and difficulty sleeping. And after that, after I received my neurology and my sleep training, I've been involved in many different organizations afterwards that have continued to cultivate my knowledge and practice. So first, let's talk about what normal sleep is. And this is a normal night's sleep, and I promise that this is going to make sense, okay? Just like a washing machine has cycles, our sleep has cycles as well. So before you go to sleep, you're awake. See, I told you this was going to make sense. At the end of the evening, we're awake. And during the night, it's actually completely normal to have some wakenings. And that actually is so normal that it has a name called NWAC, or number of wakenings. And they say that 4 or 6 wakenings in an evening is normal. And this goes back to our caveman days, where a caveman gets up, he looks around, there's no saber-toothed tiger, and then goes ahead and goes back to sleep. And this is important to know, because many times someone may have a normal awakening, and they don't realize that it's normal, so they get frustrated about it, and frustration and sleep kind of don't mix very well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So wake periods are normal, and that's one of the things that I've mentioned, that nobody sleeps through the night, everybody wakes up. Now, we have this stage of sleep called REM, rapid eye movement, and people think that this is a deep sleep, but it's not. It is our dream sleep, but it is a very active brain time where we're taking today's information and we're turning it into a long-term memory. That is the reason why you may have a dream of someone that you haven't seen in 10 years, or a place that we were in a day ago. So right off bat, we could see one important function of sleep is learning. Now in REM, our body is paralyzed, and this is a good thing. So I have a 6-year-old son. If he dreams that he's in a bounce house, he doesn't literally fall and crack his head and acting out the dream. Also, in REM, we're learning to associate these dreams with emotions, which is why you may wake up from a dream and say, like, wow, that was a good one. Or the opposite, oh my God, I'm glad that was just a dream. And you don't just start dreaming the second your head hits the pillow. Your first REM period comes after an hour of sleep, about 90 to 120 minutes. And every 90 minutes afterwards, we have another REM cycle. And this concept is important, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later. And each REM cycle gets a little bit longer, so you have more of your dream sleep in the second half, which is why when the alarm clock goes off, we may remember our dream. Now, we have this other stage of sleep that is not REM, and the name is a little bit more complicated. It's called non-REM. All right, I haven't lost anyone, good. And just like a washing machine has a deep soak at the beginning, we have this deep sleep at the beginning, and it's the first kind of 4 or 5 hours, the first 3 to 4 hours, and it is a really deep sleep. Our brain waves are slow, and that's why it's called deep slow wave sleep, and this is the refreshing part of sleep. This is where we secrete growth hormone, where we do a lot of repair in our body, and where our mind kind of clears, and it helps with short-term memory the next day. Now, interesting, it is a deep sleep. Our brain waves are slow, so we're not paralyzed, but we're not brain dead. If we hear a baby's cry or we hear an alarm, we may wake up to it. And likewise, if we have a thought, we may say it, sleep talking. You may think of a place and walk there, sleepwalking. And this is a sign that we're in a deep sleep. And kids get into this deep sleep even deeper because they are secreting growth hormone, as we said. They're going through growth spurts. So that's why you see a lot more sleepwalking and sleep talking in kids. And then after they've grown, we don't get into as deep of a sleep. We have a tendency to see that they outgrow it. So what makes our sleep drive? Get it? Sleep drive? All right. So our body and our environment interact on our brain to induce sleep. Anything that uses energy creates a waste product. You put gasoline in your car and you get the exhaust. Well, likewise, our brain utilizes energy and it makes a waste product. It makes an exhaust. And the names aren't important, the concepts are. And one thing that happens is that as the day goes by, you accumulate this exhaust, and that's why it leaves you exhausted. And that's also why it's hard to sleep past why it's hard to stay up past a certain time sometimes. We get tired. Interestingly, like I mentioned, that deep sleep is the deep part, and that's the stage that we're washing away the exhaust. So it is the core part of our sleep for refreshment. And that's also why if you're taking a late nap or a long nap, that it may be difficult to get to sleep during the evening because you're not as tired. Also interesting, caffeine counteracts that. Caffeine inhibits that waste product, that exhaust, which is one of the reasons why it's helpful in being alert, but it's also a reason why if you're drinking caffeine after 2 p.m., you may have a difficulty in getting to sleep during the evening because you won't have that tiredness. Now, melatonin, people always ask me, what do I think about melatonin? And I have a more complex answer that we'll give at the end, but people think that this over-the-counter melatonin is natural, but our natural melatonin, we make our own. And all day long, light is coming into our eyes, and it doesn't let that melatonin come out. It suppresses it. But then the light goes away, and bam, now your natural melatonin comes out, and that helps regulate our sleep timing. And what we have is this process where we accumulate this fatigue, this exhaust at the same time that the melatonin comes out, and bam, and that's what causes our sleep drive. Now, sometimes our sleep-wake cycle can get kind of chopped up. Now, if someone is waking up really early, you can see that they've accumulated this exhaust, but it's not aligned with their sleep time. They may be tired in the daytime, falling asleep in class or at work. And then sometimes we may be sleeping in late, and you can see that our environment is trying to say, hey, it's time to go to sleep, but we haven't accumulated that exhaust. So what happens is that we will have difficulty getting to sleep. And one thing that's important, and I know a lot of us have families as well, but one thing that's important is that when an adult is tired, they yawn. When a child is tired, they tantrum. And nobody tantrums like my baby girl there. And teenagers, when they're tired, they're just obnoxious. So what happens is that sometimes we have these schedules, these cycles that we're waking up early during certain times and sleeping in at other times, and essentially what we do is that we jet lag ourselves. Now, jet lag is not that you got into a plane and then all of a sudden you're tired, and it's not even a long flight that makes you tired. We just described how we have a 24-hour internal clock by the cues of sunlight and our metabolism in our body, and now you're taking that internal clock and you're putting it in a different time zone. And it's going to take some time to adjust. And symptoms of jet lag could be fatigue in the daytime and then difficulty getting to sleep at night. And generally, whenever a time zone changes, it takes about 1 day to adjust for every 1 hour time zone that we change. So if someone goes from Florida to California, that's a 3-hour time zone change. It may take them about 3 days to adjust, and that's 3 days of fatigue in the daytime and 3 days of difficulty getting to sleep. Well, what happens when, and a lot of teenagers do this, where they'll wake up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. On the weekdays, but then they're sleeping in till 11 or noon on the weekends. And what happens is that you're just jet lagging yourself by 5 or 6 hours. It's going to take 5 days to adjust, and then what? Then you're doing it again. So many times when I see teenagers, I explain this, and they have a tendency to get it, and they make changes accordingly. Except I had one teenager that once told me, "No, I don't believe in time travel." So general effects of sleep deprivation, it can affect our mind, our body, irritability. It can give us, put us in an inflammatory state that makes us more prone to diabetes and heart disease and weight gain, affecting our immune system. And it can directly affect our areas of concentration. And in children, it can cause ADHD symptoms, and it can do so in adults as well. All right, so what is sleep apnea? And not only the Hair Club president, also a member. Normally, there's plenty of room for the air to flow, and in the sleep study, you can see that this person's making the effort to breathe, but when you look at the airflow, it's not moving. It's obstructed. And what could happen is that our oxygen can come down, or it can disrupt the quality of our sleep, and this can happen multiple times during the evening. And remember, I said that an NWAC of 4 or 6, waking up 4 or 6 times in a night may be normal, but if this is happening 4 or 6 times every hour, that's not normal. That could be fragmented sleep. In kids, I know that number of us have families. In kids, the tonsils and adenoids are the main reason, but 2 to 3%, 2 out of 100 kids have this, as opposed to 10% have something called primary snoring, which means that they're snoring, but it's not affecting the brain or the oxygen. That's why we many times get a sleep evaluation instead of just taking out tonsils. In adults, it's not the tonsils, it's what I call very scientifically the back of the throat space that has a tendency to get obstructed there. And this isn't made to be a sleep apnea lecture, but I'm going to show you a pretty important point, trying to hammer the importance of treating sleep. CPAP is pressure. It's a mask that gives us pressure, and it's the gold standard in treatment of sleep apnea for adults, although there are other treatments as well. And pressure, what it does is that it cushions your airway open. And you can see that different degrees of pressure open up your airway in different amounts. And what I have is a before and after. The top is an untreated sleep apnea, and the bottom is the same patient when we have it treated. And you can see when you treat it, look how much less the oxygen desats are coming down. Now, this person up top is waking up 4 or 6 times every hour. Look how fragmented that sleep is, as opposed to when we fix that on the bottom there. The person on top, when it's untreated, they're not getting much REM, and then bam, when you put the CPAP on, they get REM rebound. So you could see how an untreated sleep apnea affects learning, but also you don't have a lot of the deep sleep in the person up top, and now on the bottom you have periods of uninterrupted sleep, and you can see how this helps in having someone just wake up fresh and not feeling fatigued and having good short-term memory, less snoring, and that's what CPAP does. And you may say, well, I thought we were talking about insomnia or sleep. Well, the person up top didn't come to me because of snoring. They didn't come to me because of concerns of sleep apnea. They came to me because of concerns of insomnia, that they were not sleeping. And what was happening is that he wasn't sleeping well on a nightly basis. He wasn't feeling refreshed. And he knew that he wasn't going to sleep well. And if you know you're not going to sleep well, you're going to have difficulty getting to sleep. And in this person, one thing that was happening is he said that his Valium wasn't working. Well, you know, he had a sleep apnea that was causing part of his insomnia, and the Valium was actually loosening his airway and making him more prone to the sleep apnea. And the prevalence of sleep apnea in males from 30 to 60 years of age is 25%. And after 60 years of age or after menopause, the incidence between males and females starts to become about the same. And an untreated sleep apnea indeed does have effects on our heart. And you can see the slide on the left is blood pressure spikes of someone who has sleep apnea there. And this is another study that at the beginning of the night treatment, there's no treatment, but then towards the second half of the evening, we did give treatment because the oxygen was coming down so low. And what I'd like to show you all is take a look at the heart. Right when the patient's awake, their heart rate is just under the 80 mark. But then as the oxygen desats start to come and we start to have skip breaths, look at the stress that it puts the heart over the 100 area. And then you gave the CPAP, and look how the heart relieves down into the 60s. And this isn't made to scare anybody, but it's to show the point that in untreated sleep apnea, this is how heart attacks can happen, or strokes in the middle of the night, or continue on with high blood pressure during the daytime. And they've done some estimates that an untreated sleep apnea does indeed give you heart complications, heart stress, just as much as smoking. So not everything is sleep apnea related. We also have restless legs sometimes. And restless legs, it's an uncomfortable sensation in your legs. It's worse at night. It's worse when you're trying to relax, and it's relieved by movement. And this kind of goes back, another thing that people ask me about sleep aids is, well, you know, what do I think about this or that? Well, melatonin isn't going to treat this. Or many of your over-the-counters that have like an antihistamine in this is going to make a restless legs worse. And like we said, a Valium or an FDA-approved sleep medication sometimes can make a sleep apnea worse. So when someone asks me what do I think about a particular treatment, my answer is always, well, what exactly are we treating? And these restless legs may keep you awake at night, and there are some times that the leg movements can affect the quality of our sleep as well while we're asleep. And there's this thing called periodic leg movement disorder, but sometimes the movements may be benign, sometimes not. And that sounds vague, but let me just show you here that this person's kicking throughout the night, but their brain is completely uninterrupted. This is not a problem here. As opposed to this person, the leg movements can be frequent or they can be forceful enough to where it is causing some brain disruption, and that can happen just as much, if not more, than a sleep apnea sometimes. So once again, what are we treating? Because many over-the-counter products will make this worse. Another real public health service announcement is about narcolepsy, trying to learn about what narcolepsy is. And normally, you know, it's normal to have some times of fatigues, but when you're in the workplace or you're trying to go through school and the sleepiness is overtaking you, then that could be a problem. Narcolepsy is not just a disorder of sleepiness, but it's a problem of REM sleep. And remember, in REM we dream, we're paralyzed, and so we don't act out our dreams, and we're associating this with emotions. So some of the symptoms that you can have is REM coming into your daytime, sleepiness, so that's a stage of sleep kind of coming into your daytime. Also cataplexy, and the name isn't important. The concept is with some strong emotion, your body can get kind of weak. So in REM, we have emotions. It's connected to our brainstem area that controls REM, and then that causes low muscle tone throughout our body. And the stereotype is someone completely collapsing, but that's a stereotype. More commonly, someone will have some fluctuations in their voice, or the vision may be kind of black because the muscles of their eyes can get kind of low, and this happens with emotions, laughter to anger. Another symptom that you may get is sleep paralysis, where you're awake, you know you're awake, but your body can't move, almost like you're paralyzed. That's that REM sleep paralysis coming in. and hallucinations as well. And this isn't psychosis, no, it's REM, it's a dream while you're awake. And these images can be vivid. And I've heard people say mirrors, a person. I had someone say that they saw midgets laughing at them. Another person likes his hallucinations because they're bizarre. He says that the other day he saw a lion, and he knew that wasn't the case. And just like you can have this REM coming into your daytime, you can also have wake coming into your REM, wake coming into your sleep at night. And that's why many patients with narcolepsy complain of insomnia or fragmented sleep. So the way that we look for narcolepsy is that we do a sleep study, but you know, if you don't have sleep apnea or a leg movement disorder, you're not answering the question as to why they're sleepy. So then we have them take 5 naps the next day. It's called an MSLT. Names aren't important, but there are 5 multiple naps, sleep. How long does it take them to get to sleep, latency, and we know what's normal, test, MSLT. And if you remember, I said that we don't just start dreaming, we don't get into REM until 90 minutes. So these are 20-minute naps. Should we see REM? No, we shouldn't. And if we do, that would be pretty sudden. And that's what we see. We see sudden onsets of those REM periods. We see REM coming into these 20-minute naps, 2 or more, when we do this test. And that's a sign of REM intrusion into the daytime. If you see in that picture there, that guy's running fast with an eye. Get it? Rapid eye movement. So now you see these REM intrusions coming into your daytime, and you can understand the symptoms of narcolepsy. And this is a painting of sleep paralysis and hypnopompic hallucinations during the Gothic times. This is how long we've been recording some of these symptoms here. And narcolepsy starts to come out around 15 to 19 years of age, with a broad range of 7 to 22 years of age. Unfortunately, what happens is that this disorder is very misunderstood or not understood at all. And a decade may go by being told that you're either ADHD or that you're lazy or that you're depressed, or you know, these symptoms happen when there's an emotion, so you're anxious, and the more you're told that you're anxious, the more anxious you become. So many times, actually most oftentimes, it's actually undiagnosed throughout their lifetime. But when it is diagnosed, many times it's about a decade late. So I don't have narcolepsy or sleep apnea or restless legs, you know, why can't I sleep? And I've heard this many times, that sometimes people have a difficulty in unplugging their mind. And this is the back cover of my adult insomnia book there. Insomnia, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or poor quality of sleep. So, you know, in essence, it's you're awake when you want to be asleep, but it's more complex than that. And it is associated with distress and problems with our function. And it can impact our quality of life in many different ways. And it is very common. Complaints in some studies on a chronic basis that it could be happening about 30 to 40% of the population. And 90% of the population has had at least an adjustment insomnia where something occurs in their life and they have difficulty sleeping. So that's 90% of the population, and the other 10% are in denial. Well, this brings up the point, why is sleep important? Well, it's a key to our health, performance, safety, quality of life. It's essential to our ability to perform both cognitive and physical tasks, engage fully in life, and function in an effective and safe and productive way. And sleep disorders and sleep deprivation is affecting a lot of our workforce. How much sleep should someone get? You know, there are all kinds of charts and, you know, all kinds of charts that tell you different ranges. I like things that are easy to remember. A 12-month-old should get 11 plus 1, 11 hours of sleep plus 1 nap. A 10-year-old should get 10 hours of sleep. A 9th grader through high school should get about 9 hours of sleep. When you have your 8 to 4 job, those 8-hour days, about 8 hours of sleep. Into our elderlies in the 70s, we should get about 7 hours of sleep. And then it's normal to reintroduce a nap. And this can vary by 1 hour, either 1 or 2 hours, 1 hour either way. But that's a nutshell, something that's easy to remember. However, a lot of Americans are getting less than 6 hours chronically and are having a number of issues with chronic sleep deprivation. And during a week's time frame, multiple people in our workforce have symptoms of insomnia, or they snore, or they have unpleasant sensations in their legs. And the effects of sleepiness and fatigue do cause some impairment in reaction time, judgment, problems with processing information, problems with your vigilance, moodiness, and you can have periods of microsleep as well, where you have you kind of black out because your brain just kind of slows down and you miss periods of the day. And it really can affect us in a lot of different ways, from concentration to handling stress, listening, relating to others, problem solving, and decision making. Now, people have a tendency to relate to when you talk about money. All right, well, $115 billion per year is affected in our workforce from sleep problems that may lead to absenteeism, workplace accidents, or loss of productivity. How much is this 1 hour lecture worth here? And I'm here for free because I enjoy this. The other thing that people relate to is alcohol. You know, they can relate to alcohol. And 18 hours of sustained wakefulness gives you like a blood alcohol level of 0.05. 24 hours of sustained wakefulness gives us a blood alcohol level of 0.1, where we're no longer, where it's illegal to drive. And they've done these studies where they give one group of people alcohol to beyond the legal limit, and another group sleep deprivation, and then they have them do driving simulation tests, and consistently the sleep deprived group does worse. And then they took sleep deprived people and gave them alcohol, and exponentially they did even worse. Another thing that people have a tendency to relate to is tragedy. And there have been many tragedies that have been caused from sleeplessness. Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, the Exxon Valdez, all of this was due to sleep deprivation, including the Challenger. Some of the managers that were involved in the launch only slept 2 hours before getting to work at 1 a.m. And I think one of the greatest tragedies, I don't know if you remember in the movie Star Wars, Anakin Skywalker, he had insomnia. And I truly believe that if he would have been read my children's books, my children's book for sleep when he was a kid, that he would have never turned to the dark side. Rest in peace, Lord Vader. So going back to insomnia again, insomnia is a symptom. And I like to give an example. You know, fever. Fever is a symptom. People don't have a fever disorder. No, you have a fever for a reason, and it may be because of the strep throat, or it could be from Ebola, but it is a symptom. And giving someone Tylenol for their fever may make them comfortable, but you're not treating the underlying infection. And the same is true with sleep medications as well. Insomnia could be from a sleep apnea, it could be from restless legs, it could be from chronic stress, from life-altering events that are occurring. And sleep medications may help them comfortable, and there's a place for it, but to think that we're treating the underlying disorder, we're not actually. And many times people get something called psychophysiologic insomnia, and it doesn't mean that we're psycho, but get this, some people have difficulty sleeping because something's on their mind, and what's on their mind is that they have difficulty sleeping. And the harder that they try to sleep, the worse that it gets, the more frustrated and tired that they get. So that's that concept again of psychophysiologic insomnia, or having difficulty unplugging our mind. And that's something that I do, is through story and metaphor, and through my website I talk about different sleep health topics. And the treatments of getting to the underlying source of insomnia are sleep hygiene, stimulus control, sleep restriction, relaxation training, cognitive therapy, and circadian entrainment. So behavioral sleep medicine. And that's why I always start first with the education. You could see circadian entrainment, or making sure that we're waking up at proper times and not sleeping in longer. And this is important because they gave some of these behavioral treatments for insomnia comparison up against medications, and this has been replicated many times. And in this landmark study, they gave one group an FDA-approved medication for insomnia, and at 2 months they had lower insomnia scores, but at 2 years they were never really any better off than what they were, and they developed tolerance. They gave another group a combination of some of these behavioral sleep treatments as well as a medication, and they did better with lower insomnia scores at 2 months and lower at 2 years. And they gave another group no medications at all. They gave them just cognitive behavioral therapy for sleep, and they did better at 2 months, lower insomnia scores, and they did best overall, where they had the lowest insomnia scores at the end of it, because they were able to treat the underlying issues that were occurring in their life. The winner there. So once again, and that's why I always start with circadian entrainment, and all of these, you can give probably about another half hour or 1 hour lecture, and that's beyond the scope, but to introduce you to certain concepts. So I always start with the circadian entrainment, so we learn about what makes our sleep drive. And then there's this concept of sleep hygiene, stimulus control, sleep restriction, and I kind of lump these together and say that it's really about associations, and just give you some brief examples. Whenever you see a hotel sign, you always see a bed. People associate it with great sleep. You just saw a commercial that someone's doing brain surgery and dental work at the same time because they stayed at a Holiday Inn. Well, sometimes when you go to a hotel, you sleep great, but towards the end, you have difficulty sleeping. Well, what happens is that you got there, you associate it with sleep, you turn the air down because you don't have to pay for the electricity bill, and you cuddle up in the sheets and you sleep great. But now a couple days go by and you've been watching TV in bed, eating pizza in bed, your bed's not made, you have your suitcase on here, you got your shopping bags everywhere, you've been waiting for people to get ready, you've spent so much time in that room in the daytime that you've lost that association with sleep. And these are some concepts that we see at home as well. Sometimes people, they say that they can't sleep in their bed. I can't sleep, so what do? They get up and they go on the couch and bam, they fall asleep on the couch. Or the opposite, they're watching a movie on the couch, they fall asleep, and then they go to bed, oh no, now I can't sleep. It's because I walked too fast, or because there was too much light. And what happens is that they've learned to associate their bed with I cannot sleep. So that's a concept in stimulus control, that what we try to do is make our place, our bed, a place for sleep only, and remove daytime activities. So here's another concept. I'm going to ask some questions and y'all could just nod your head. And I promise that these are not hard questions, okay? Does everyone here drive or has ever been driven? Okay, everyone. All right, good. While you are driving, are you trying to fall asleep or are you trying to stay alert? Stay alert. Okay, good. I told you, they're not hard questions. When you drive, do you ever listen to the radio? Can you see how maybe subconsciously you're learning to associate that radio with alertness? So let me give you a different example. You ring a bell and give a dog food. You ring a bell and give a dog food. And you do this over and over again. One day you ring the bell and you don't bring out the food. What's the dog going to think? He's still going to think that it's time to eat. Yeah. And it's not because you fed him the bell. That would be animal cruelty. It's that stimulus control. They've learned that stimulus. Well, now can you see how, let's give a scenario, okay? Let's say you're in bed and you're not asleep. Can you see how maybe it's a bad idea to bring that same radio to the bed? The same radio station or song that you listen to alertness. It may not be a good idea. Well, so what do we do when, do we check our email, Facebook, watch TV, play video games? Do we do these things because it bores us to sleep? Or do we do it because it engages us and entertains us? So people all commonly ask me what do I think about a TV in the bedroom or stuff like that, and just electronics overall are very engaging because it's what we associate with fun. And bringing that into the bed is going to make it so that it's difficult to get to sleep. We have, just like we have a heart rate, we have brain rates. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but it doesn't allow our brain rates to slow down when we bring these engaging activities. So use the bed for sleep only. Go to bed only when sleepy. Get out of bed when you're unable to sleep. Wake up at consistent times, including on the weekends. Now, remember, if we're sleeping in later on the weekends, that can jet lag us. However, waking up 4 or 5 a.m. on the weekends may not be the ideal thing for us, but as long as we're trying to make it so that it's not several hours, and certainly the ideal time to wake up would be when it's light outside again. And do not take daytime late naps. They actually have it right in Latin America, where you have this lull for after lunch, and a 20 to 40 minute siesta can be helpful. But if you're having insomnia, you may want to go some time without those naps until you get it regularized again. And sleep restriction is if you're not asleep, get out of bed, do something else, or do a calming exercise, something that we'll talk about a little bit later. So sleep hygiene, sleep hygiene, now explanations are more important than instructions. You've already read many of these things before, but now understanding the science, you can understand why light is bad for your sleep hygiene, because it affects your melatonin. Your environment, you want it to be quiet, calm, because you don't want to disrupt brain activity, your sleep activity. The activities that we do associate our bed with either sleep or wakefulness. The routines that we have, having a nice calming routine, putting on your pajamas, and if those pajamas are comfortable, don't wear them all day long on the weekends, because then again, you'll lose that association. Now we know about napping. We understand napping, and then substances, why caffeine late in the evening can be bad for sleep. And in shift work sleep disorders, the sleep hygiene is particularly important. Shift work sleep disorder, we have recurrent or persistent mismatch between our sleep-wake schedules and our own body's circadian rhythm. And it's associated both with insomnia, difficulty sleeping, as well as excessive sleepiness. And it can cause distress and functional impairment. And working the night shift does increase risk for crashes 6 times. Rotating shift workers need to be extra careful. And a poll found that 80% of shift workers have been sleepy when they drive the next day. And I'm not saying don't shift work. No, I mean, it's needed. It's necessary, and it's vital to your company. I mean, yeah, we have to have it. But, I was told at the end of the lecture that I gave at Baycare, you know what? Our shift workers, many times, we never follow these things, or we'll always just go on about our day. And maybe it's because we don't understand the value of sleep, which is why I'm here today to talk about that. So instead of focusing on the problems that shift work can cause, let's talk about some solutions, some things that are helpful. Again, as mentioned, few shift workers fully complete their sleep cycles, but now with the understanding of how important it is, we can make more effort to do it. And napping actually can be very helpful in shift workers. And there's this something called an anchor nap, that if you're able to get 4 hours of sleep just before that night shift, that it's been shown to improve scores of alertness, and that can improve your overall safety. Also, if afterwards, okay, you take your 4-hour anchor nap, whenever you're done, whenever you can, if you're taking another 3 to 4 hour nap, period at the patient convenience, this has been shown to improve sleepiness in shift workers. Bright light exposure early in the shift helps with alertness. It's inhibiting our own endogenous melatonin. And also wearing dark glasses on your way home to allow for our own melatonin to be able to come out. The combination of these has been shown to improve work performance, decrease sleepiness and tiredness, improve daytime sleep patterns, and also improve mood as well. So these are our shift work is a reality, and these are some measures that we can take to be more safe at the workplace and at home as well. And then one of the last things that we talk about is we have a lot of stresses in our day that make it so that we're not able to get to sleep, regardless of whether you're a shift worker or not. We have these racing thoughts. And insomnia is not a night disorder. Insomnia is a 24-hour disorder. There are things that happen to you all day long that affect your ability to get to sleep at night, and a poor night's sleep can have an impact on your next day. And sleep and stress are like oil and water. They just don't mix. And if you think about it, everyone who I've ever met has had a dream that they're falling, and you wake up. I've never met anybody who finished a dream where they fall, oh, they crack their head, now I got to go to the ER, and it's winter, so the snowbirds are down here, and I got to wait longer. No one's ever finished that dream, because sleep and stress, they're incompatible. They wake up and say, oh, it was just a dream. So what can we do if sleep and stress are incompatible? Well, there's different methods. There's progressive muscle relaxation, diaphragmatic breathing, meditation, guided imagery, and biofeedback. There's a lot of relaxation training that we can do for sleep. And in the future, if you'd like, I'd be happy to come back and just give a 1-hour lecture on different forms of practical relaxation training. For now, I'm just going to do this one exercise. Concept again. Just like you have a heart rate, you have a brain rate. And what happens to your heart when you are agitated? It goes up. And what happens to your mind? It races, it goes up. Why is this person doing this to me? You start making up stories. You think about the past, you think about the future, you're not thinking about now. Well, what happens if you are in bed and you're not asleep and you're agitated that you're not asleep? Your heart and mind are going to race, psychophysiologic insomnia. So we're going to do a little demonstration over here, some mind-blowing science, okay? I'm going to pick out some random people and we're going to blow some bubbles. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So now let's blow bubbles 5 times, all right? That's good. 5, and I'll do the counting so you don't have to worry. 4, that's right. 3, nice long strains are coming out of there. 2, and take a look at all the colors. Yeah, you're good. All right, take a look at the colors on that. Very good. All right, and that's 1. Good job. All right, you can put those down. So you 3 look a little bit more relaxed than we did a second ago. It looks like you just moved your shoulders like that, and that's an observation that I was making, that your shoulders looked a little bit more relaxed. While I did this, were you thinking about insomnia? Or were you thinking about shift work? So you weren't thinking about some of the things that we had just spent all this time talking about. You know, we said that some people have difficulty sleeping because they have difficulty shutting their mind, but you didn't know that you already know how to kind of calm your mind. Very nice. So the science behind this, remember, when you are agitated, your heart races, and as your heart races, so does your mind. Well, when we breathe, as we breathe in, our heart is variable, if not speeds up, but as you exhale, your heart slows down. And if you take a minute, and we did much less than a minute, and we were breathing out slower than we were breathing in, we have a calming effect on our heart, and it calms down our mind as well. Does this really work? All right, another question, and remember, I don't ask hard questions. Has everyone here been to a doctor before because they don't feel well? All right. And have they ever written you a prescription, especially now with the new electronic scripts? Have they ever written you a prescription for a chicken? No. Yet chicken soup makes you feel good. And I assure you, it's not the gluten or high sodium load. What happens is that it's hot. You have to blow on it. So that's the foundation, what we were doing with these exhalations, the foundation of yogic breathing, mindful breathing. The breath has been incorporated in so many aspects of our lives over generations, from martial arts to childbirth. And smiling makes you feel good. One of the things that I told you to do is take a look at the colors. And as you look at the colors, you see a halo within a halo within a halo. And it's impossible to picture a frown. What you do is that you smile, and smiling makes you feel good. And there's a biology behind that. The muscles of facial expression, they come from our brainstem area, and they have connections to our limbic system or our emotion area, as well as connections down to our heart that gives us that heartfelt feeling when we smile. And then we have our brain involved. And people say the word, your brain. Okay, that's like saying your lung, your kidney. Hopefully you have lungs and kidneys. Well, likewise, we do have brains. And we have a right side and a left side. And our left side is our language area. It is logical, it likes words, and it's a source of racing thoughts. The right side of our brain is creative, and it's imaginative. And when you activate one side, the other side goes down. So when you're thinking about all of these problems that you have, you lose the right brain and ability to find creative ways to solutions. But as we were blowing the bubbles, that was something that was very creative. And we weren't thinking about some of the other stuff that we have to do later or that, or from this morning. And it's funny, brain maturity. I read this book, The Whole Brain Challenge. They were talking about the brain maturity, and they gave this definition. Her brain is mostly mature after 1 year of age, and she continues to have brain maturity until her 20s. By that definition, the male brain never really fully matures. But we were born with such wonderful creativity, but many times through schooling, and it's not a knock on teachers, we have awesome teachers, but we're so focused on that left side and the logical that we lose some of the creativity that we have. And I believe this to be true, that if every 8-year-old were to be taught meditation, that we would eliminate violence within a generation. And I've been through parts of the world where the right of manhood was to go through the military. And I remember getting currency exchange from this guy with a shotgun there, and a lot of military stops. And then I went to in Asia, in this one place called Laos, that the right of manhood there in the city that we were in was to spend 2 years in the Buddhism monasteries. And the serenity of that place, the calmness that just seeped from everywhere. I've never felt so safe in any place. And this was before I knew anything about meditation or mindfulness or anything like this. But this is important for us to learn and to teach our children as well. But where are you going to learn it? It's going to take some effort, because we weren't taught this in school. Our doctors aren't taught this in medical school. We have to pass it down to the next generation. And these are my kids here. And they do mirror neurons. They mirror. Kids will do that. And this looks cute, but I gotta confess, it's actually sleep-avoiding behavior. If you see that they're in their pajamas and I go, kids, it's time to go to bed, and they go, no, Dad, we meditate. Well, relaxation is a mental exercise, and exercise is the key word, okay? You have to find time to do it. You have to do it on a regular basis. And I say that walking a mile is not running a marathon, and that sounds obvious. But if you've never been to the gym before, and then someone tells you to go run 10 miles on a treadmill, oh, well, that sucks. I may not be coming back. But that's what we do many times when we say, you know what, I want to learn about meditation and whatnot, and we go out and we get this hour-long CD. Well, that's a mental marathon, and we need to progressively kind of build ourselves to it. That's why I like to start with just that bubbles things. And it has been shown that people who do regular practices of relaxation, and it's not just meditation, it's in prayer as well, and in contemplative thought, that the more that we practice something, the better we get at it. We build areas of sustained attention and compassion. And brain is one of those things that you either use it or lose it. Thank you very much for having me. I'll be happy to take any questions. Again, if anyone wants a copy of electronic copy of any of my books, just contact me through my website, and I'll be happy to give that. It's Paradise Sleep. And remember to encourage others, because it makes the world a better place. Thank you.